Hey, everybody, I'm David Bloom. Welcome to this week's flagship edition of Next TMT Talks. The flagship sets sail today with a look at whether that Netflix engagement problem really is much of a problem. Will MLS and the National Women's Soccer League see a post World Cup boost after all the coverage of the last 6 to 7 weeks? Fanatics Fest proves a big draw as the one-time collectibles company moves into integrated media land, and Apple raises subscription prices. So with that and much else, I now give you my co-founder, Daniel Frankel. What's on your mind, Daniel? You had some
Hello.
thoughts and some analysis, which is wacky. Who does that anymore?
Is that the general lead behind you? I think it is.
It is. It is part of a fascinating, fantastic exhibition that was at the Museum of Contemporary Art last year called Monuments. It was really groundbreaking, taking all these former symbols of the Confederate South and having them used in various ways by artists who had some, say, less than respectful but very trenchant commentary on some of those former statues that were taken down after Black Lives Matter and all the rest. So I'm being woke today. Woke.
But the general league, its battle hymn with the Republic horn, its Confederate flag on its roof, it never offended me. It was
Never offended you.
A good year for muscle cars.
You are an older white male from Southern California. You might not be the target audience for being
At one time I was.
At one point, you were from the South of California, and therefore...
Well, I had this friend Greg in 6th grade who was from Georgia. So, we were...
So it transferred. Is that what you're saying?
He got me way into cars with my first exposure to muscle cars. His dad took us on a tour of the GM plant that was making Camaros and Trans Ams in those days. Kind of got me a little into the sort of Southern automotive scene a little bit. Didn't last, but...
All right. Well, in this case, I think it was nose down and in the mire. It has been somewhat repudiated in times past. So anyway, that being said...
But we're not going to get the subject of Netflix, but since we are on the subject of nose down in the mire...
Yeah.
And we're talking about Netflix. The wife and
something else with red letters, right? Netflix, the big red N.
We perused the new Will Ferrell, Molly Shannon comedy, which is very much like Apple's Stick with Owen Wilson, down on his luck golfer, trying to get one big shot at the tour, arch rival, which I guess is Luke Wilson in this case. Oh, I'm telling you, it didn't work for me.
Didn't work for critics either. This is Hawk, I believe you're talking about.
It is Hawk.
Yeah, it was more like HOCK instead of HAWK because people were hawking up a loogie on it. So
yeah, kind of got the what you were going for. You didn't have to go that far, but okay. That's
it's a vivid metaphor playing on the name. That's all I can say. If they wanted to name it something else, it would have been better. But Netflix, something much bigger and better, you would suggest, than many on the street perceived after they reported Q2 earnings and got beat up, and their shares continued their southerly slide like the general league into the mire, as it were. So, but you argue, and I think you're onto something here. It's kind of crazy how they're beating these guys up. It's not that bad.
Well, I mean, revenue deceleration is happening. You can look at it, the numbers. I think the guidance...
the growth in revenue is decelerating. So the growth in revenue isn't as big, but the revenue grew at 2.6% or something like that. It still grew in a time when many people believe the economy is not that great for a lot of people. So that's something. But 2.6 wasn't enough to get people excited.
Well, correct? I think it's the long-term projection. They expect it to clear Q3. I think 11.7% is the projection, the guidance, and that's a pretty steep decline from 17.2% Q3 2025. So the forward-looking guidance is so good, and they responded to the big question about engagement with, well, we'll give you this big a data dump about our shows one time a year as opposed to 2 times a year. Right. And it seems like there's a pattern there. We discussed that whenever something stops growing, they just stop revealing it, which...
Stop talking about it. That's totally not surprising, but also totally not excellent if you are a close watcher of the stock. It is interesting though. You dove into some of those numbers. So they added a bunch more listeners or viewers, and they had about 3% fewer titles.
No, they
So do
haven't.
the math.
It's hard to tell how many viewers are at it these days. They're not
Right.
giving subscriber numbers. If there's growth anywhere, they'll tell you about it, but they'll usually not get very specific about it.
Right.
The issue is, hours spent on the platform. If you look at from 2023, the beginning of the year 2026, the platform grows by about 94 million users. So that's on a percentage basis like 40%, but hours spent on the platform using content only grows like 4 and change. So obviously, per user, we're spending a lot less time on Netflix these days.
Yeah.
And you are seeing, as Bloomberg noted, market declines from season to season of shows like Beef and The Night Agent, Last Avatar, or Avatar: Last Airbender, just to name a
But you
few of the
pointed
examples.
out like the Night Agent in season 3 still got 357 million hours or some crazy number of view. Is that right?
The model for expensive original series does seem to be changing on them. At the
Yeah.
same time, streaming engagement seems to be tied to live sports now. You hear it everywhere, but statistically that holds up. And it seems like they've pivoted well. And what I was fixated on reading through that report were the numbers for the World Baseball Classic. For $100 million, they basically bought a franchise that was super popular in Japan and streamed it only in Japan. Fox had it here, and it was a one nation play.
But it was a one nation with Shohei Ohtani, about half the Dodgers lineup, and it was in Japan. So that was a good,
Right.
as these things go, I think that was a good bet.
It's hard to tell you because they showed it ad free. It was
Yeah.
basically a partnership with the World Baseball Classic organization. It's hard to tell how accretive it was in year one, but it certainly did big viewership numbers. It was the most watched Netflix show of all time in Japan. It was the biggest, most streamed baseball broadcast of all time. So you have to assume that they've built themselves a relationship with World Baseball Classic. They'll be back to do it next year, and monetization, if it hasn't come already, will come. And what's good about that is Japan is a tough market. It's like the US and Canada. It's pretty saturated for streaming, and Netflix generated a record growth in the region, at least record for it. Japan was its biggest subscriber growth contributor in Q1. These kind of live events, you don't watch unless it's a really meaningful game and you actually beat. Japan got eliminated pretty early, as I recall. Unless you
They
advance
didn't make it to the semis. So people were surprised how early they went out. But
my point is,
it was still hugely popular.
Not a lot of long tail viewing associated with live events, as there is a original series where you might tell a roommate or a brother, sister, somebody living in your house, your child, your wife, hey, watch this. And
this is all about tune in. This is about tune in, not word of mouth.
Right.
It catches up 2 weeks later. It's definitely not that. But I don't even know if we have a lot. Well, we've certainly got water coolers out there. They're called TikTok and Instagram, and they do something. There is some sharing going on. Some
Netflix
virality.
is like, if you compare spreadsheet to spreadsheet, they're also distributing less. They're spending more on shows from first half of 2023 to first half of 2026. I think the budget goes from 13 billion to 20 billion, even accounting for Trump's inflation. That's still an increase.
I think a big chunk of that is
but they're distributing fewer shows.
Rights. Yeah, but it's sports rights too, though. That's part of it too.
Right. So they're taking fewer shots on goal. That's also a factor. And maybe accumulating I thought this quote from Greg Peters was actually spot on. Not all hours were created equal. Not all viewing hours. A premium live sporting event, championship game in a tournament like the World Baseball Classic, and all the associated ad revenue that comes from that huge audience. I think the total 31.7 million viewers, I think, is Netflix's official number for the tournament.
Damn.
That's worth a lot more money than season 3 of a series all hours are kind of, are kind of equal, and it's a different business. And I think,
Well, they've been saying that line about not all hours basically are created equal for a few earnings calls now that since they've gotten into live sports, the Jake Paul fight and WWE Raw and things like that. And those have become really an interesting component of what they're doing. One of the things I was struck by was everybody freaked out about them. Meanwhile, their margins have gone up. They were 29.5% at the end of the year. They were 33.4%, 4 points more, which is a lot just in 6 months. Their margin is up to 33.4%. And there's not a lot out there that has margin like it. Nobody else in the streaming business except YouTube, which is around 40%. And it's sort of a different
right.
beast because it doesn't pay for programming, really. It's at 40.1%, I think, something like that. And it's hard to compare these things because they're not all broken out the same way. They're folded into this thing or barely mentioned over here, or you've got to extract them in some way. But the margins for everybody else, and like Peacock into 2025 was a minus 20%. That's not a profit margin. That's a loss margin.
Yeah, let's
But
go the other way.
but the point being that here's a company, a market leading company with a market leading profit margin that's growing
Well,
at a PE
I do
ratio
think
that's
they,
21 point is 21x. It's like, okay, I get that you guys are concerned about these things and you're diving out, but it ain't bad. I mean, it's pretty good. So you're going to beat up these guys. I mean, it just felt like
I
the
tend to
street is
be an
very unforgiving
apologist
right
for
now.
them. I have to admit,
Yeah.
I'm a bit of I've cheerleaded for them in the past, but I don't feel entirely unjustified. They kind of said what they meant in recent earnings
Mhm.
reports. They're developing their ad business. They're moving fast on it. They're interested in very strategic, creative, high value live sports that don't break the bank, but do a lot for them, for their outlay. And they're going to pursue those goals and migrate the business to a little bit more of a live event orientation. And they've done that. Is there a kind of transitionary garden hose to go through? I don't know if it's constrictive as that, but revenue growth acceleration to hopefully I corrected it that time is down a little bit, but I think the market is overreacting. I think you think that too.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I don't think it's wrong to knock them down from 125 a share, but knock it down to 68 feels a bit
Like I'm
rough. I
buying.
mean, a bit rough. I mean,
Yeah.
that's like Elon numbers. I mean, Elon comes out a month ago with SpaceX. It shoots up to 225 in the first few days. And now it's down at, was it 123 or something like that? Half that, well below what the price was when it came out. So all those folks who were like, oh, this is going to the moon and we're going with it. Probably it's good that they have some lockup stuff for some of these folks because they need to hold on to it for a while before they see their money back. Speaking of all that, I began reading a mammoth report from Moffett Nathanson about Starlink, which is the only part of SpaceX that's making any money.
Yeah. We
And
featured that in the Thursday issue.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a long report, but they're just saying, look, good business in rural areas, but as we've discussed, it's still, even after their next iteration, unlikely over the next 5 years to be able to be valuable in urban areas. So then it becomes, what are you paying for? And I think that's one of the things that's caused that stock market reaction to be what it
Well, I
is.
think that the rocket issue
Yeah.
was the most recent thing. They delayed a launch, and supposedly that spurred the latest decline. I was kind
If
of
you are
surprised. I mean,
betting on the $1 trillion company based on a single rocket launch delay, you are going to be really unhappy very quickly.
I also saw Craig Moffat's appearance on CNBC, which I enjoyed. I always get a lot out
Yeah.
when he speaks on anything.
Yeah.
But I was a little bit confused. I always thought the assumption was in the economic model and the valuation was built in to an assumption, or vice versa, that a terrestrial radio-driven network was always part of the plan, that they would get one
I
by
mean,
hook.
the acquisition of some sort of already on the ground, built out, more traditional looking system that works better in urban areas and other densely populated regions.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
Dish has a half-built one or whatever built version of one.
Yeah, whatever its creditors are still willing to credit to it.
Right. Charter has a
Minor detail.
Wi-Fi hotspot-driven CBRS inclusive gizmo that it could, I guess it's in talks with SpaceX about. And there's always the possibility that you buy Verizon or T-Mobile or even AT&T, I guess. Is that possible?
Yeah.
Not too
Well,
big.
I mean, I think you're talking about EchoStar, I think is technically the term that owns Dish now. I think that's right. And
Right.
EchoStar has $10 billion in worth of shares in SpaceX as a part of the payout for that forced sale of some of its spectrum, right? So it's
Yeah.
already partly in the family. So
Yeah,
maybe
they're
that makes it
going forward.
easy.
Their Boost is going to be a Starlink client. It's going to sell D2D satellite wireless to its customers, in addition
Yeah.
to lease MVNO space on one of the other wireless companies. So,
but is that just going to be prepaid? Like that's the low end of the market. Is they going to do prepaid for Starlink?
that's my
Broadband?
understanding.
Ooh, okay. A lot of churn in
Well,
that business.
if you live in a rural area, you'll get Boost and you'll get your data and your voice directly from a satellite. That's my understanding.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Okay. All right. Well, that doesn't solve their urban challenges.
And I wasn't
Correct?
wrong today when I thought Argentina waited too long to go on the attack, but I'm sure you'll have something to say about that.
I have nothing to say about that. The better team won.
Yeah.
Clearly, when you outshoot your opponent 19-0,
My point is, like,
nothing. When you have the other team that got nothing has Lionel Messi and you were outshot 19-0, you didn't deserve to win or even
Lionel
go to
looked a
the
little tired
shootout.
today. I thought he looked a little bit.
Eh, he's 39. He's up there, and it was hot and steamy. But they all look pretty tired. That being said, speaking of sports, I was interested to see Fanatics had its Fanatic Fest event, which has grown in just a couple of years from 70,000 attendees at the Jacob Javits Center in New York to 200,000 people.
Holy shit.
And they showcased the fact that they had announced this partnership with a company that's done some music documentaries and stuff like on Travis Scott and the like to create a full-fledged production company within Fanatics to do Fanatics Studios, to do all kinds of stuff. And they've got deals with the World Baseball Classic, with the LA Olympics, the official documentary for the LA Olympics in 2028. Oh, by the way, LA, you just exhale World Cup. They've opened up signups to work in the 2028 Olympics this week. So get out there and volunteer, kids. But it's coming. It's only 2 years away. It's right around the corner. So, but they've got like all these different, Tom Brady documentary about Brady's involvement in flag football. So now they have taken this collectibles business that was also selling team hats and jerseys and stuff, but also collectible versions. They bought Topps. Remember the baseball card company? Collectible cards, really. They bought Topps, and now they have a prediction market, Big Shock. And so you can bet on all these teams that you're fanatical about. And now they have live events that are just blowing up and a production company to help do all this. So all of a sudden it's gotten very big and very integrated in a really interesting way. So I just thought that I didn't want that to pass without noting it. It's going to be interesting. This is the kind of company, if Netflix wants a boost, buy Fanatics. Screw NBC Universal. Buy Fanatics, right? You get hardcore tune-in guys. You layer in their production stuff on top of yours, their relationships with all of the major sports leagues on top of yours. This gets really interesting really fast. Just saying.
It seems like they're getting pressure to buy something like the.
Oh, yeah. I don't think they'll make the mistake. Lionsgate, which has been trying to sell itself for a few years now.
I thought it was
And
some
no matter
activity on that.
there is. Banijay, which is now being run by Jeff Zucker, ex of CNN and NBC.
Right.
Banijay bought All Three Media, completed that deal. Now they say they are the biggest independent production company in the world, and they are big and do a lot of reality show stuff or unscripted stuff. but they want to flesh things out, and they're looking around at this mini major that's been trying to hawk itself to somebody. Not hawk, but hawk. Well, actually, both hawks. Yes, sell itself to somebody is out there with a. I don't think it's a great library by all accounts, but it does have John Wick. It's got, some of the YA stuff that was pretty big. So it's got some things you could do some stuff with. So there's some.
I subscribed to Lionsgate Plus for 4 days before I canceled my 7-day trial.
Wow.
I wanted to watch Midway, Dave. It's important, key battle in the.
It was a very important turning point in World War II. It was not a turning point in cinematic history, however. Is this the original Midway from, I don't know, 50s or something?
No. Which I'd seen before. It was a major television event when it finally came on. My mom, bless her heart, made me watch it, and I'm glad she did it as a 10-year-old or however it was. I really enjoyed it. Okay. This was the one with Woody Harrelson, and I think it was 2019. Roland Emmerich, who I think was the director. And
okay.
I'd seen it once.
Deliver a blockbuster once in a while, but I mean, all right. Well, it didn't cost you anything except your time. So
the Americans won, decisive victory.
Yes, I heard that happened.
Anyway,
it made a big difference.
I signed up to watch it through the Amazon Prime Video app on Lionsgate Plus under the free 7-day trial.
Okay.
Did my due diligence after watching the movie, looked around at the library, found that I could get most of the things in other locations, and didn't see $5.99 of accretive value for the family. Checked out of it. Sorry, Lionsgate. Good luck with Banijay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. They have some very good TV shows like Orange is the New Black, which they made for Netflix, and a bunch of other really well-made TV shows and some movies that are pretty solid. I mean, if you're into John Wick and 500 Death, it's like even more than Midway by a single guy. But, they've got some stuff, but it's not a deep catalog. And as you say, $5.99 feels pretty rich for something that's not got that much and isn't rolling out that much new stuff on a regular basis. It should be, I don't know,
part of Banijay, fact from my youth baseball days, and I won't go into the youth baseball much, but we had a couple of moms in the stands. One was a high-profile creator, Netflix creator, and creator of that show, and one was a creator of syndicated action hours who claims that was her show, and they had differences in terms of ownership and credit, and they couldn't be in the same stands together. We had to manage that.
So just to be clear, the same show had the original creator and the syndicator, who each were making.
Let me explain. 2 creators. Okay, I'm not sure which one gets the credit, and I don't want to allow them to get sued. But
the WGA knows which one.
One of,
but anyway,
which I'll call the BitShare one. Her background was in Cindy Action Hours. She did one of the big fantasy action hours and made her, that was her claim to fame before she got into network procedurals and streaming original content. And she had it in for this other woman who was a big shot. Both of them saw themselves as the creator of Orange is the New Black. And ultimately it was a show that paid its workers, I think, an ungodly low sum of money. And I think they both did quite well for themselves. So
I'm sure they did. Hopefully the author of the book about whose life was actually modeled did okay as well. I don't recall her name at this point, but it did, for what it's worth, that show, like Oz on HBO, was a ensemble show that was like one of the first places you saw a bunch of really stellar up and coming talent first show its wares, right? And they went on to do
just want to see Sex in Prison,
I'm going to leave that between you and your spouse and our beloved viewership. No, it's interesting if you go back, and I don't have the cast of either one of them at hand, but Idris Elba, or it's a long list of folks that were in those shows that went on to bigger and better and greater things. So that being said, Apple, speaking of margins, its services division has an annual revenue run rate now north of $130 billion. Okay. So this is all their subscription stuff. It's their warranty thing. It's iCloud. They bumped up the price
Mm,
on their bundles from 37.90 at the high end, 37.95 to 39.95 for the
mm.
Apple One top tier, which is 6 different things: Apple News, Apple
Do
Music,
you
Apple TV, Apple
do you pay for
Fitness.
that?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I pay for it. I'm enough of an Apple geek. I
I'm
gotta
already
do it.
paying $19 for Apple TV Plus or TV, I guess it's called now. And
Well,
you
this is
you
$40 for everything for 6 people.
yeah, I'm gonna consider that because I also have cloud storage for myself, 2 for my
Right.
son. So that's like $10 right there. Pretty soon
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
already there anyway.
So it includes the 2 terabyte Apple iCloud storage. And why that matters all of a sudden, and it's interesting the timing of this, 2 months before the new iPhones come out, if you want to be able to use the supposedly newer, better, and most incredible Siri and the new phones with the new AI capabilities on your smart home technologies, you have to have the 2 terabyte plan to fully take advantage of everything that's out there. But
Yeah.
that being said, in the meantime, Apple gonna get another $24 a year out of me, and, but I'm happy to pay it because it takes care of a lot of stuff that I use, like music and some of their TV shows and their Apple News. I'm reading, multiple hours a day, et cetera, et cetera. So,
I
but
was reading about this big chip shortage and the associated spike in manufacturing costs that's getting passed on to the consumer by Apple and others,
by
and how
everybody,
Apple and Samsung are gonna come out. They're the best equipped to ride this out, and
yeah.
so
Well,
they'll
they're big
actually
enough, but they're big enough. First of all, Samsung makes a lot of chips, and now Apple does too, just not memory. But they're both big enough that they can do deals over much longer time frames. So I suspect they beat up people like Micron enough in the low periods that Micron is very much enjoying returning the favor as much as they can to some
right.
of these customers of theirs, including probably Apple, which is noted for being ferocious in its negotiations. Tim Cook has got a good Auburn education and a Southern genteel demeanor, but he can be a fierce negotiator. We'll just leave it at that.
When
So
is he, stepping to the board or
I
stepping
think
out?
September 1, he becomes chairman, executive chairman, and John Turnus takes over fully as
Yeah.
CEO. But clearly, it's really okay. We take the training wheels off, but he's already doing a lot. And Cook at that point, I think,
Mm.
segues to chief Trump negotiator as his biggest role, trying to quell our only president from more random tariffs and stuff. So they got some issues
Yeah.
because like they with the one of the tricks they want to do is take there's a set of companies in China that make memory. Okay. All of them are on the sort of banned company lists for understandable national security reasons, no problem. But what if Apple gets a waiver to use those chips in phones that only are distributed in China? Where's the security thing? So that's a reasonable question. And one of the things that they're trying to make happen. And it's actually a pretty smart workaround around Micron out of Idaho and SK Hynix out of South Korea, et cetera, to work around some of these bottlenecks as everybody buys up the high end supply of stuff that those companies have. So there's nothing left for the low end, more consumer facing uses of RAM. So
What did you think about, a few weeks ago, and you reported on it, the price of Apple gadgets was going up, select Apple devices, due to chip prices. And after
mm,
that, Bernie Sanders chimed in, "You made this much last year." I forgot what the margin was, but it was high.
yeah, yeah.
How about you
Well,
eat that for the
their margins like I think I added 38% or something like that, 41%. It's on hardware, it's ridiculous. It's unbelievable. Well, yeah, Bernie, noted businessman, Bernie Sanders, an octogenarian. Maybe he's not the guy you go to for business advice. Apple will cut its prices when people stop buying. And in the meantime, to not, you know, cover your costs would be kind of malpractice in business. You got to charge what the market will bear. And then probably there are ways they can make nice. But the reality is, again, they're not alone. Samsung's
Charge
raising
what the
prices,
market will
Google's
bear.
raising prices. Sony PlayStations are way off the charts in expense. Xbox from Microsoft is incredibly expensive now. All of those devices and many others are through the roof because of the demand at the high end from the data center guys for the more expensive, and they're 4 times as expensive on that one and 4 times more resource demanding on those business facing data center memory chips. So it really gets you 4 times over, you know. So that's where all the wiggle room in the supply chain used to be, and it's all gone. All gone. As
So
long as we're still building out.
before we get out of here, I wanted to ask you about, and I know we discussed it a few days ago for Midweek, where Paramount stands in terms of its negotiation with not just 12 blue state attorney generals, but also their European Union folks
I think
standing in
those
the
are the
way.
big ones. I think those are the big ones left. The attorneys general here in the US and then the EU, which is not nothing. I mean, that's
The more I read, the more it just suggests that, they would, if you ask them to put too many of their cable channels up for sale, the deal no longer makes sense because part of it is linear
that's where the
cable
cash
is
comes
still
from.
free to,
Yeah,
right. It's
I mean
still free to
they are
attach.
depending on all those cable channels to milk them as long as possible to finance as long as they can, even if they're like zombie channels, to milk them of carriage fees and advertising revenue and all that till they get to some new homeostasis. So if you don't
So
have
is
those cable
Banijay
channels, you
going to
got
buy,
problems.
is Jeff Zucker and Banijay going to swoop in and buy CNN?
I think it's
Return to the
important to
throne.
remember that Jeff Zucker is with Redbird IMI. Redbird is Jerry Cardinale's company. Jerry Cardinale is one of the people involved in the Paramount deal. So Redbird Cardinale, you can see where he got the name. He's one of the biggest media investors out there. And so Redbird IMI was one of his operations. That's being run by Zucker now. And Zucker's running the combined Banijay.
Not a big fan of birds, Dave. I consider them kind of like flying rodents, but
Okay, they're not. They're flying
if they're flying,
dinosaurs. A, B, rodents are mammals closer in relation to you than to birds. I will just point that out. And many birds eat the rodents. So you should be grateful for the birds in helping keep the rodents from getting out of control. But that's a minor biological note to be made.
it's an
Also, I'm a
aside for
Cardinals
sure. But like, if you're
fan
gonna
in
get
St.
light to
Louis.
something, why birds? It's a good question. It should be considered on a podcast, just not our own.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I'm not
so does
sure
this
it's
preclude?
taking flight. Well, here's the thing I want to ask though. One last thing though. I
Sure.
mean, do you think that we will see a big boost for Major League Soccer and NWSL women's soccer in the United States? 34 years ago, 32 years ago, when the last time we had a World Cup in the United States, there were no pro leagues, none to get any boost.
Right.
MLS came along a couple years later. Don Garber, who's been the commissioner since 1999, is saying, "Hey, come on, we're so excited you guys are doing that, but look, we've got 30 franchises now with a combined value of $23 billion. Some of the owners include Stan Kroenke, the Rams guy, Rams and Arsenal guy,
Yeah.
Phil Anschutz, who owns the Kings, and a bunch of other pro teams. Oh, Robert Kraft, who owns the Patriots. I mean, they've got like some serious ownership and a bunch of new stadiums that they're playing in. Some of these are purpose built, like the LAFC and Galaxy stadiums are beautiful, like 35,000 seat stadiums. The LAFC in particular has quite the fan base. It's quite an experience to go there to a game. I mean, those folks, many of them, I think, are clinically nuts, but it's
I
really
don't know.
quite an experience to go there.
I don't mean to keep getting really tangential and out there, but You look at the primary or one of the primary consumer bases for football, the international kind in America, and it's being seriously targeted now. We haven't seen anything yet, despite kind of international level condemnation of what ICE is doing. The program is funded again, and their deportation goals are really lofty. And if you make a big dent in that market, who knows what happens? The Spanish speaking following for football in this country has massive potential. It's a little fragmented, as we discussed the other day. But if you cum all those leagues up and all those TV contracts, just in America alone, it's a big number.
It is a big number.
Yeah.
Telemundo just today, as we will report in the newsletter, Telemundo just today released the deal it did with UEFA, the European Club Championships. And they're going to be, it's a 3-year deal for all of the games in 4 different competitions. And I won't go into the minutia of that, but that includes like a youth league and some other stuff. But that's like the Euro Championships for the clubs, which is a big thing. The Spanish language rights exclusively in the United States. So they're not waiting to figure out who gets 2030 and 2034 World Cup rights. They're doing UEFA now. So
it's also it just from a kind of an outsider's perspective, it just seems very fragmented and nobody's going to get rich. They'll all get these good little incremental audiences and deals, but a massive
but
like the
how
World
is that
Cup
different than
just
the
doesn't.
NFL, which has got what 7 organizations now carrying its games?
Yeah, but
And
if
that's
you're
just one
Peacock,
league. That's
you're
not
not.
20 leagues.
Yeah, but like for a couple days a year, or a couple games, Peacock has those exclusives, and it's the church, it's the collective destination that we all tune into. Netflix enjoys that on Christmas Day. What the NFL offers all of its broadcasters, or most of them, it seems like, is at least 1 or 2 days a year of absolute primacy. And
Well, and that's great for the NFL. But
Fox
my,
can
my
provide that
point,
with the World Cup. I mean, everybody
yeah,
in their sister was watching that game today. It was great.
yep.
But outside of that, and I'm asking you because you know better. I'm not being a smart aleck here. What kind of collective F is there in soccer North American broadcast wise?
Well,
Also,
I think it's the question is, will this thing have legs? And Messi, of course, has already been part of the Major League Soccer ads that have been running the last week since first national ad by MLS saying, "Hey, we're here, come watch us." And it features Messi. I think he actually says something. He doesn't say much in his ads. He's in a lot of them, but he doesn't say very much. At least not
mhm.
the English language ads. He'll say stuff in his native language, Spanish. But so they're promoting Messi's involvement, and they already played 2 games this weekend. They'll be back to a regular schedule pretty close, and they're going to shift from a summertime schedule to a schedule like the rest of the major soccer leagues. So that'll help some too, I think, in terms of things like being able to get more high level players to come to Major League Soccer, the ability to have some more homegrown stars, the Christian Pulisic's of the world. They've got some like salary exceptions for homegrown stars on the salary cap that they have, things like that. And I don't think it should be lost on anybody, speaking of salary caps, that Major League Baseball is about to self-immolate.
Well, let me just go
They
back
are
to one thing before you
okay.
say that. Was it Chastain? Who was the female player 30 years ago who stripped down to her sports bra after a game? And it was a powerful scene. It was
It
a
wasn't
scene of
30 years ago, but yes, it was like 18 or
at the
20
Rose
years
Bowl.
ago now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the U.S. won the Women's World Cup,
Yeah.
and
The first
the
of 3 that they won.
and it felt like leveling up for women's athletics in general. It felt like a
Yeah.
leveling up for soccer in general, and nothing seems to really have become of it. Like I feel like the WNBA still fights some of those perception battles today. We're still
But
having the
the
same
WNBA
conversation.
is now available in more places. More games are available. They're flying first class. They've got
Right.
better facilities. They're adding franchises, one a year in the next 3 years. The WNBA is not what it was 15 years ago, 8 years ago. I mean, Caitlin Clark is in the middle of some weird culture war crap, even if she had an
She put up
extraordinary
40 the
game.
other night. Yeah.
No, not just that. She put up 45 with 10 assists, which has never been done in the league's history. So when she's healthy, she's had some back issues and stuff like that. When she's
Right.
healthy, she's
Oh, you see
amazing.
she does
But
take a pounding. I mean, they do beat her up. There's a
oh
lot of
yeah,
resentment going her
yeah,
way.
like she could be playing Argentina. I mean, they beat the crap out of her, and some of that ends up becoming this culture war thing. Like the Black
Yeah.
Stars are jealous because the white girl who's just showed up here gets all the attention, but the white girl is helping the Black Stars, who certainly deserve a lot of attention, a chance to make a lot more money. And the new contract the WNBA signed before this year, after some brinksmanship, helps make sure that their best players are making seven figures, which is
Yeah.
great. And they're being even the least of them are making six figures, which is not the case before.
Yeah,
They were
I
making
can't
they were making less
uh,
than journalists, for God's sakes.
what is the official publication of Caitlin Clark outrage? Is it Outkick? I read that sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. We all have spare time for something. Mine is for Battlefield 6, which has its fourth season coming up. With, I might add, this is interesting. They unveiled Battlefield 6 is going to have a Top Gun crossover. They hired three of the Top Gun actors as voiceover actors within their newest season of Battlefield 6, which is Electronic Arts. I'm going to be talking with one of the executives at EA this week too, so I'm looking
You're
forward
a
to
good
this. It's
pilot,
really
Dave, but you're
interesting.
reckless. You're going to get somebody killed.
I'm going to get a lot of people killed, probably me most, given my kill death ratio is really ugly, but I have a good time while I'm doing it. But it's interesting to see them doing crossovers with Top Gun because they've got a part of what makes Battlefield interesting is this round has naval warfare as well as tanks and boats and all that on an island and jet planes and helicopters and all of that. So you've got this whole thing going on where you got to be able to fly planes or choppers or boats or tanks or whatever, and or just shoot people. Yeah. So
Speaking of
yeah.
war and war fighters, there's a media angle actually to this one. So,
But one last thing, just to circle back to your Midway. So one of the two new maps is Wake Island, which was
oh,
also the scene of a very important battle in World War II between the
yeah,
Japanese and American forces. Yeah.
landing on
So
those carriers, even with those slower moving planes,
still wasn't
seems,
easy.
yeah.
Still wasn't easy. In this game, you're mostly taking off of the carrier or defending the carrier from being invaded, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, the point being that EA is reaching out to a beloved movie brand, hiring actors from there, working them into a limited time experience. And I find that really fascinating. So,
What do you think, speaking of the movies, all this mutual back scratching? Matt Damon said that Christopher Nolan taught him what it meant to make movies again. And Anne Hathaway says that Matt Damon was the best leading man she ever had.
boy, this is shocking news. I miss the days of Justin Baldoni and what's her name
You like a good
creating
lawsuit.
fake law. I mean, lawsuits over fake public affairs and social media campaigns. I mean, I miss
Yeah.
those days because those weren't that long ago, and they were truly vicious. Someday it'll be a American horror story like reenactment or something. But the important part for
So
that the important part for that is that the Odyssey launched with something like 257 million. It's always going to get adjusted a little bit by the time Monday gets here. It's 250 some odd $1 million in global box office gross. And that
yeah.
means it has an extremely good chance of covering not only its $250 million production costs and $125 million it probably spent on this endless marketing campaign, but it also is a big screw you to Elon Musk and his online boys, and they are almost certainly all boys, who were kvetching about Lupita Nyong'o being Helen of Troy, when in fact she is, in reality, probably the most beautiful woman in the world. And I find it amusing that this whole line of go woke, go broke did not hold on a movie that's not gotten 100% critical favor, but very high. I mean, like Richard Brody at the New Yorker didn't like it. The other five guys, including Justin Chang, who used to work for the LA Times, who's now at the New
Used to work
Yorker,
with us
all thought, yeah,
at Variety.
that
I
Variety, yeah.
remember writing.
Justin's come a long way. So he's at the New Yorker now. He and four other reviewers at the New Yorker all gave it a thumbs up. So Brody, who is a very particular flavor of old school, crotchety ass critic, interesting,
Yeah.
amazing use of language, but he doesn't like a lot of stuff. And the things he likes, you're going to go, huh? Was that a yes? I like this, but he's interesting to read. Anyway, that's just one shop. Most critics think it's great. Audiences give it a big old thumbs up, and 250 odd million dollars, including all those sold out IMAX theaters, says a lot.
I'm a little
So,
trepidatious. I want to see it because of the universal acclaim. And I do like Christopher Nolan. I do like Matt Damon. I do like Ed Hathaway. But
and
I don't
Universal wants you
like
to see it too, by the way, because they have a
I
lot of acclaim for it since
like
they're
Lord of the
distributing it.
Rings, fantasy action stuff. I don't dig on that stuff. So I'm hoping that there's something else here besides
Well,
a
it's one of our most prominent and interesting directors taking on one of our texts that has been foundational for really all of
right.
Western civilization and trying to tell it in a way that is relevant to a modern audience in a compelling 3 hour, brisk
It's
3 hours. You know,
Pios level storytelling. Certainly I can understand it and appreciate it. A Philistine like me, why
no,
not?
probably not. Probably not. And I would say also that I have not seen it, but I understand that it is nowhere near as weird or horny as the original. And I would still recommend folks dig out the original and take a gander at one of the more recent translations that might get into what he was doing for 8 years with that witch on an island. And I guarantee you it wasn't just talking about how much he missed his wife, but in the
Yeah.
movie, they like kind of walk around for a few minutes and then he says, it's been nice to know you. I'm heading off. So,
So what was the last film who made the last attempt to make a film
oh,
version of that?
there's one about, I mean, it
Didn't
kind of
Brad
depends
Pitt
on
take a stab at it?
like 25 years ago. Doesn't matter. You know, this is one from a celebrity director. You know, probably there's only a couple of directors. Tarantino's another one. There's only a couple of directors that can open a movie now, and there's virtually no movie stars that can open a movie. So this is one of them. This is his new thing. It'll get a bunch of Oscar nominations. It'll probably win a few, maybe a lot. And if you don't want to be left out at the virtual water cooler known as TikTok, you'll probably have to go see it at some point and
So
tell
what's
Elon why he's
Tarantino gonna
wrong.
do next for us? I mean, it's been
He's quitting.
7 years now. 7 years since
But he
Once
said
Upon
he
a Time in
wasn't going to
Hollywood.
make any more movies. He said he was done.
He said he had one more in the chamber.
Yeah. Well, he hasn't been loading up. So I haven't heard anything. He's mostly been annoying in recent times. You know,
Yeah,
beating up on actors who I don't think had as high a testosterone level as he wanted,
that low
basically.
T is a bitch.
That low T is
But
a problem in our Defense Department, or at least with our War Secretary, and with Quentin Tarantino. I mean, this low T issue is hard for them to get their little brains past. So that's
the
what it
Coen
is.
brothers could produce a character like Pete Hegseth. All war fighters. Now we'll just the
Dude,
language in the
he should have
theater.
been. Oh, he should have been. Speaking of the Odyssey, actually, if you want to know the best recent take on the Odyssey, "Oh Wherefore Art Thou, Brother," by the Coen brothers, is basically the Odyssey in Southern Goth drag. It's great. It's fantastic. Amazing music. Great, great soundtrack.
That's the one with George Clooney, and I've seen that.
George Clooney and but if you look at that and you actually know just the general outline of the Odyssey, it's the Odyssey in Southern Goth drag, and it is easily
Right.
the best take on the Odyssey before this one, and probably even compared to this one, probably has better music. Though the guy who does the soundtrack for the Odyssey's getting a lot of love too.
So we should probably
But
wrap
the
up.
other was the best. The other
Mention
was the best selling movie soundtrack, I believe, of all time. Oh, for Wherefore Art Thou, Brother. It's fantastic stuff. helped ignite renewed interest in Americana music. Has a bunch of great artists on it. I highly recommend.
Was it the Ballad of Buster Scruggs, the soundtrack?
No, that was a different movie. Different movie. You are wandering, but it's fantastic, and you can get it on Apple Music for I think $8 a month. Spotify actually raised its prices too, and they're actually more expensive. So there you go. With that, we should probably wrap this up because we love Spotify and Apple Music because they are two places that carry our podcasts on both the audio and visual forms.
Before you do the wrap, a couple things on the horizon. We've got the co-founder and CEO of Beehive Platform, our platform for newsletters,
our newsletter production CMS platform.
So we're going to go
just to clarify
deep on digital publishing, kind of a change of pace for us on Thursday. Looking forward to that. So tune into our midweek edition. And we're also in the process of putting together a series of daily issues that will go around IBC in Amsterdam. So if you have earned media
September. Mid-September.
And
one insane weekend in Amsterdam, which doesn't even have to include any brain-altering substances other than pickled herring.
I was having a discussion with a mutual PR friend about the food in Amsterdam. We're a little concerned about it, but anyway.
Well, I can point to one fantastic Indonesian and two fantastic Italian restaurants that were within blocks of where I stayed last year, for instance. The Indonesian stuff is great. And those who remember their colonial history know that the Dutch were in the West Indies for a long time, being not great colonialists, like all the colonialists, but they brought back some really good food. So if you want to do that, I recommend it as a adventure for food that you don't often see in many corners of the United States.
Looking for that. A culinary guide to your trip for Amsterdam.
We can at least throw up a few suggestions. Yeah. In every way, minus the heroin habit. So there's that. With that, we probably should wrap this puppy up. I am David Bloom, co-founder of Next TMT, and this here podcast, Next TMT Talks. You can subscribe at Next TMT as in technology, media, and telecom. TMT.com to get the newsletter twice a week in your mailbox. And you can go to YouTube, Apple Music, and Spotify to get podcast versions of our conversations, these things here. If you don't know where these came from, if they just sort of dropped out of the sky into your earlobes, fantastic. Thank you for everything you do for us. We appreciate our viewers. Like, share, subscribe, comment, and we have stuff coming up. We look forward to continuing our wonderful conversation with all of you. This is David Bloom and Daniel Frankel saying over and out.